Chicago has released body camera footage of a police officer shooting and killing a 13-year-old boy. They said that he was armed with a gun. Now, the story is tragic. I grew up in Chicago. I understand this kind of stuff all too well. I have known people who have been in these situations. And you need to understand is, first, nobody wanted a kid to die. I don't even think the cop wanted to be in that situation. Let's start treating people like humans and start talking about these tragedies and what's causing them. Not just, it's like a Chinese finger trap where we're missing the big picture. Chicago has problems. Gangs give kids guns and tell them to do things in an effort to avoid criminal liability for themselves. They'll tell the kid, you have to do this if you want to join the gang. Here's the gun. Go shoot that person. And the kid will do it. And the argument is, well, you'll get out of jail when you're 18. And then the adults don't get in trouble. At least they try not to. Sometimes they get implicated. It happens. Chicago's got problems, man. Now, here's where things gets frustrating for those of us who really want to solve these problems and figure out what's going on. In the body camera footage, the left is now claiming that it shows the child clearly was unarmed. In fact, that's not true. But they said he had his hands up and they were empty, and that's true. This is where things get complicated. We have this story from the Daily Mail. Quote, he lied about the police killing a child. AOC slams prosecutor in Adam Toledo case for telling a judge the boy was holding a gun as she renews attack on system that covers up state violence. He was holding a gun. There's video footage of him holding a gun. The big issue, I suppose, is that when CBS published the story, they cropped the video down so you can't actually see the kid holding the gun. The kid apparently was holding it, tossed it real quick, and threw his hands up before getting shot. So now there is a still photo going around on the left of a young boy holding his hands up and being shot. And there is a still photo of a young boy holding a gun, I think it's a Glock, holding a gun and then getting shot. If you want to understand the truth, you need to understand the whole picture. The left isn't giving you the whole picture. They're reactive. I mean, they're reactionaries. That means something else, but they react to things. They don't investigate things. So AOC is screaming and she is wrong. It's frustrating to have hordes of people smashing windows and burning cities down because they're too stupid to do a Google search. Now, I don't like to be mean to people, but these people are burning down buildings. They are violent criminals and they are stupid people. And because of that, we all have to suffer. AOC is a stupid person as well. U.S. Rep AOC has accused a prosecutor in the Adam Toledo police shooting death of lying in a Thursday tweet. The prosecutor and Cook County Assistant State's Attorney, James Murphy, told a court earlier this month that the video showed Toledo, a 13-year-old boy who was fatally shot by a Chicago police officer, had a gun in his hand when he was shot. He did. Define when he was shot. What's the time frame? When the police were chasing after the kid, he was armed. When the police drew their weapons, he was armed. And when the kid tossed the gun and threw his hands up, he got shot. Why? The problem is partly for the police. They were I'm pretty sure they were yelling, put your hands up or, drop the weapon. The problem is as soon as they make a movement, the cop is like, that you don't know what that movement's going to be. We can't see the future. So are they raising their hands or are they raising the weapon? So the cop fired. I don't know what you do in a situation like that. That's tough. The kid should not have died, but he did have a gun. You want to talk about whether it's justified or not, by all means do so, but the kid had a gun. They say, and this is amazing where the Daily Mail gets it wrong. I'm going to fact check them and it's going to be quite fun. Video showed the teen appearing to drop a handgun and raising his hands right before the cop opened fire. A handgun was also found near where he was shot. You see how they say this? Appearing to drop a handgun. Wait. So you mean he did have a gun in his hand, and then in a tenth of a second, when he drops it and raises his hands, he gets shot? See how they frame this. Watch. Police say the teen had a handgun on him that morning, and that less than a second passed from when Toledo was seen with the gun in his hand to when Stillman opened fire. That's true. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office said in a statement that the prosecutor failed to fully inform himself before speaking in court. Errors like that cannot happen, and this has been addressed with the individual involved. The video speaks for itself. AOC did not accept the explanation. The prosecutor did not make an error. He lied. The Democrat rep from New York's 14th congressional district wrote, he lied about the police killing a child. Ending this isn't just about consequences for who pulls the trigger. It's about admitting to and confronting an entire system that exists to protect, defend, and cover up state violence. Now listen, AOC wants to come out and rag on state violence. All right, I'm down. I just don't believe they're genuine. They just want to be the ones who wield the state violence. Yeah, they want to appoint their woke brigade to be the police to use state violence. And there's a really good example of that in, I think it was Milwaukee, when a bunch of Black Lives Matter activists were outside of a man's home and protesting. And in his home, he brandished a shotgun. When the police came for him and when they yelled, called the cops, they were cheering for it. When the violence, when the oppression from the state is on their side, they're happy. So no, I don't believe AOC. She is a liar. Listen, I said she was stupid. Let me clarify that. She's very talented and she is very capable and she's smart in many ways. But maybe I shouldn't underestimate her by calling her stupid. And I should point out she probably knows what she is doing. They say a still frame from the newly released footage of the shooting that killed 13-year-old Toledo on March 29th shows he was not holding anything. The footage also shows he had his hands up when the officer shot him once in the chest. Video appears to show the boy throwing something away that could have been a gun. Gun residue was found in the teen's hand, but it is not clear from the footage he was not holding anything when he was shot. Over the weekend, prosecutors had described the events of the video that had not yet been made public at the time as the judge set bond at $150,000 for the 21-year-old who was with Toledo. Lawyers prosecuting Ruben Roman, who was represented by a public defender, he was charged with reckless discharge. Prosecutors told the court that video captured Roman firing shots before police responded to the scene, who dropped gloves on the ground that later tested positive for gunshot residue. The other officer on the scene then chased Toledo, telling him to stop repeatedly, who eventually complied near a break in a wooden fence, prosecutors said. The 13-year-old boy was then ordered by police to show his hands, Cook County's Assistant State's Attorney James Murphy said. Prosecutors said the boy was told to drop it. As Toledo, with the gun in his right hand, according to prosecutors, turned toward the officer opened fire, hitting the teen once in the chest. The prosecutor then said the gun Toledo was holding landed a few feet away, despite it being shown in the now released footage that he was not holding anything when he was shot. This is the problem. The activists are arguing that the police should have been able to, in a split second, in a high adrenaline moment, where a kid is holding a gun, understand his movements were specifically to raise them. Now, to clarify, they're saying the cop should have immediately recognized his hands were empty, but it was a high intensity moment. And I'll tell you this. When they say, see, his hands were empty when he got shot, that's not fair. It is fair to say that the cop is the one who wanted his hands up and should not have shot. That's fair. But the kid did have a gun, period. It's a problem. The kid shouldn't have died. They say, the congresswoman has been one of the top critics of law enforcement. This we know. Protests have been in Minneapolis. This we understand. Here's the gun. The Chicago Police Department released a photo of the gun that was recovered from the scene after one of its officers shot and killed Adam Toledo. And they go on to mention, Ayanna Presley, a member of the squad, tweeted he was 13 years old and the police executed him. Executed. Would be dropping him to his knees and putting a gun to his head. This was a chase from a kid who was armed. Chicago has a problem, man. But this is not how we solve it. It's not. I mean, the Chicago police are one of the worst departments in the country. They are insanely corrupt. They operate black sites. You know what that is? It's like an unmarked building where they bring people and beat them and do other nasty stuff. There was this big story about a guy who was electrocuting suspects in Chicago into false confessions. I know CPD is bad, but let's be honest about what happened. I'd like you to check out the Federalist. The Federalist is absolutely in the doghouse with NewsGuard. You know that I use NewsGuard sources for everything on purpose because I'm going to fact check these things. I will criticize them if they get things wrong, but the sources of information will be NewsGuard. Now check this out. NewsGuard says the Federalist is a trash rag. They say it severely violates basic journalistic standards. It's an anonymously owned website that has repeatedly published false or misleading information in significant news and opinion stories. All right, that's significant. Here's the thing, though. In this instance, I find it fascinating. The Federalist actually has got the factual story. It says, CBS News edited police body cam video to mask teen holding a gun before he was fatally shot. Now, let me slow down there, Federalist. We don't know exactly why they edited it. So to say they did it to do this, I would not agree with. Hence, probably why one of the reasons NewsGuard gives them a bad rating. I would say CBS News edits police body camera footage, masking teen holding a gun before he was shot. The to there implies it was intentional. I don't know that. But they're still correct in a broader sense. CBS publishes this video, which I'm not going to play. It says newly released body cam footage shows Chicago police chasing and fatally shooting 13-year-old Adam Toledo. Jerry Dunleavy tweets, CBS News shared a version of the police body camera footage where the right and left edges of the video were trimmed away, meaning that the portion of the video where Adam Toledo is seen holding a firearm at one point is no longer visible because it is now just off screen. He then posts the full video, and we have many other people, including Ryan Saavedra, who says, quote, unarmed. Andrew Yang tweeted, a child was killed in Chicago. His name was Adam Toledo. He was 13. He was unarmed. His hands were up. He wasn't unarmed. That's not true. The problem here is that the left has an opportunity to frame this as hands up, don't shoot, by saying his hands were up and then he was shot. That is technically the truth. The best kind of the truth, if you ask me. I'm saying that sarcastically, by the way. The reality is, cop was in a bad spot. Kid had a gun in his hand. Cop said, put your hands up. When the kid made his movement, the cop seems to have panicked and shot him. I think it was, man, this one's tough. This one's really tough. Cop should not have shot him. That's a fact. But if you've never been in a high intensity moment, you're not thinking the same way. You're not, like, hindsight is 20/20. I'm sure looking back on it now, people are like, but he put his hands up. Cop panicked. I'm sorry, though. Cop panicking is no excuse for shooting somebody. I remember that story where a cop pulled somebody over and the guy's, gets out of his van and the cop's like, can you give me your license and insurance? And the guy goes, okay. And then leans into the car and the cop goes, no. And the cop shoots the guy several times like, you asked him to get his wallet. What are you doing? Scared cops are a problem. The kid should not have been shot. But be honest about what happened. This is not the same story as the guy who got pulled over, was asked to get his wallet and got shot. This is a kid and a guy, and they're armed and they're running. And then the kid has a gun. And the cop, drop it, put your hands up. The kid moves, the kid gets shot. I don't know how you solve for these problems, man. I really don't. But lying about it ain't it. I think it's funny that the Federalist, as I mentioned, is the one lacking credibility. To be fair, the Daily Mail I think, frames it poorly. The Daily Mail, many on the left say it's biased, it's conservative. Dude, they do stuff on the left for the left all the time. They hated Trump. Many news outlets are giving you this textualized version that doesn't explain what actually happened. Within a split second of dropping the gun, he was shot. His hands went up. It's irrelevant. In this video, you see him holding the gun. The cop may have decided to shoot the moment he had the gun and he pulled it. And then the cop, no, and then he puts his finger on the trigger. Then the kid throws it and throws his hands up and he's already in the process of being shot. It was a split second. I don't know how you solve for these problems, man. I think you need to understand that tragedies will happen no matter what. Unless everyone's got a personal force field and then no one gets shot anymore, I don't know how you solve for this. But let me show you what the left is saying. Bakari Sellers, verified Twitter user, 360,000 followers, CNN and Strom Law, author of a New York Times bestseller, said, compare Adam Toledo to Kyle Rittenhouse. This is what we're talking about. Okay, let's compare Adam Toledo to Kyle Rittenhouse. Toledo was with an older man. Both were armed. They were engaging in criminal activity. And they fled from police. And then, there was gunshot residue. They were apparently already discharges. And the kid had a gun. The cop panicked, shot him. Kid did put his hands up. Kyle Rittenhouse. The police abandoned the area. Riots had been persisting for a few days. He was, my understanding right now, is legal possession of a long gun because I believe many people were saying he was a minor. He wasn't allowed to have that. That may be the case, but I think right now there's a legal argument he was. So let's just call that undetermined. Potentially illegal or legal, we're not entirely sure. It was a mass riot where a 70-year-old man or someone in his 70s was bashed over the back of the head and left bloody because people were trying to burn down his business. And several businesses had already been set on fire. And Kyle Rittenhouse was trying to put fires out and render aid to the rioters. That's a very different story. When several of the rioters tried pushing a flaming dumpster into a gas station, which would potentially blow it up, Kyle Rittenhouse and his crew acted to extinguish that fire. The extremists got angry and then attacked Kyle Rittenhouse and chased him, and he fled. It was only after someone fired a gun did he turn around and shoot in self-defense. Upon shooting the man in self-defense, he then said, "I'm going to go get help," and he ran to the police. And when on one video, someone said, "What happened? What happened?" He says, "I'm getting the police. I'm getting the police." They then said, it's him, get him," and they chase after him. Someone kicked him and knocked him to the ground. He rolled over. They tried grabbing his gun. He fired in self-defense, putting a bullet in the heart of one man. Then another guy tried grabbing him, and he blew his bicep off. Don't grab someone's gun. Rittenhouse was trying to go to the police, and they told him to F off, basically. He went home and turned himself in. The issue is, they're nowhere near the same things. Police responding to an illegal discharge in a city and chasing after a kid who's armed and then kid gets shot shouldn't have happened, but it's dramatically different from an area where there's no police, ongoing riots, and people are attacking a guy who was literally just rendering them aid previously. Kyle Rittenhouse was not a criminal. He was a lifeguard, is my understanding. And in my opinion, he should not have been in that situation either. It should not have happened. The problem is, in Chicago with Adam Toledo, the cops intervened in a crime in progress. In Kenosha, the police did not. Compared to Kyle Rittenhouse, they're two entirely different things. You want to talk about what should or shouldn't happen with Rittenhouse? I hear you. There's no real easy way to understand, or to know. Everyone thinks they're right. Hindsight is 20/20. Kyle Rittenhouse was trying to defend his area, and he was trying to stop the chaos and save lives. And they attacked him for it, and he defended himself. And he was allowed to do it. He was not a kid who was in a gang, who was romping around these streets or doing these things. We'll see what happens. I think they overcharged him. The bigger question I have, though, in this comparison is the Second Amendment. Does it apply to minors? In my opinion, yes, it does. Now, I know most people won't agree. Conservatives probably won't agree to a certain extent. Liberals definitely won't agree. I would assume leftists probably would agree because they want young, impassioned revolutionaries to be armed, maybe. Conservatives probably agree that a kid should be able to have a gun if they're, under proper supervision or their parent is helping them. Libertarians probably just agree outright. Kids should be allowed to have guns. I'm not saying that kids should have guns, but I'm saying the Second Amendment applies to kids with guns. I believe the Constitution applies to everyone. Now, some people have said, Tim, that means Second Amendment, that means people under 18 should have the right to vote. I do not believe the Constitution sets an age limit for voting. I could be wrong about that. Maybe I'm wrong. I think it doesn't, though. There are amendments that were added later about, race, race and sex. Not national origin. I was thinking civil rights. That you can't be barred from voting on the basis of your race or your sex. I don't think there's anything specific that says age. Though typically the Constitution does apply to young people, the issue here is that, and I'll tell you why I think Second Amendment does apply to someone who's 13 years old. Back when they wrote this, a 13-year-old was, I know it's kind of weird, but an adult. Isn't that crazy? I mean, go watch Interview with a Vampire when, was it Brad Pitt? He's like, I was 26 and I was a man at that age, master of my own plantation. It's like, yeah. People these days are 22 and they're just out of college and they've never had a job before at 22. That's insane. Back then, you'd be 16 and married and having your kids. Maybe around 17 or 18, you'd have kids. You'd have a family. You were an adult. I believe they intended for people to have guns. Kids would have to work and needed to be armed. And I'm sure there were many young people fighting. I'm not saying we should maintain the idea of child soldiers or kids fighting or working factories or anything like that. Of course not. I'm just saying the Constitution applies to everyone. Someone who's 13 has constitutional rights. They have a right to the Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, all that stuff. It's not held true for the most part. The reason I say this, though, they have passed laws in the past few years saying if you're under 21, you can't buy guns. Some people have tried, I should say. Some stores have said we won't sell guns to people under 21. That's a violation of people's rights. When you say that 18 is the right age, How long until they say 21 is the right age? 23, 26, 27, 28, 30, 35, 40, 41. Where does it end? I mean it seriously. 18 is an arbitrary number set by today's standards. It wasn't always the case. 21 is the next arbitrary number. How does it make sense that you can't buy cigarettes in some states until you're 21? 21? That's insane. I always thought it was crazy that you could legally die for your government, but you couldn't drink a beer. How stupid is that? These rules seem to be arbitrary. Now, I understand the idea of why you don't give alcohol to kids or drugs to kids. I agree with that. But should a child, a minor, be allowed to bear arms? 100%. Because we are not talking about some kid running around like a moron with a gun. We're talking about many different circumstances. First, hunting. Yeah, go out and hunt with your dad. Maybe you're hunting turkey. I'm not talking about a 5.56, AR-15. I'm talking about a shotgun. So what if a kid needs to defend themselves in the home? Well, as Reason points out in this article, typically they do have a right to bear arms in their home in self-defense. But what if you're on your property outside? What if you want to go to the movies? Why does your right to self-defense end when you're simply walking around a public common area? What I'm getting to here is the bigger argument to me is that the police chasing after a kid because he was armed or using that as justification to shoot him, I believe is wrong. I don't think the cops should shoot people simply because they have guns. It's in the Constitution. This is a problem. There are cops who are like, he had a gun, I got scared, I shot him. I don't care. If the cop was scared that you were speaking naughty words, he would shoot you. I understand words aren't going to kill you, and a gun might. So the cop's defending himself. But if the Constitution says we have a right to bear arms, then the burden is on the state. If you see someone with a gun, you go, he's got a gun, I'm going to shoot him. The Constitution says you can have a gun. The kid was running. I get it. The cop was scared. I get it. It's a tragedy. These things shouldn't happen. But you need to understand, we can't just assume there's no line, that it's just randomly determined. We need to understand what the rules are. If somebody has a gun, I do not believe that should be the sole justification for getting shot. I don't. The cop should have been like, a kid's got a gun. What do you do? Approach it better or just let him go? I don't know, man. The problem is we're passing more and more restrictive laws. The city says no one can have guns. Then you get a kid with a gun, so the cop shoots him because he's not supposed to have a gun. He won't drop it. It's going to be a problem so long as we recognize that sometimes maybe the laws are the problem. What would have happened if the cop just said, drop the weapon, and the kid ran, and the cop didn't give chase because the kid was allowed to bear arms? I can tell you this, the kid would not be dead. The left will try to argue that they can, clairvoyance. And I'm not here for this. Well, he would have then had the gun, and then maybe he would have shot someone. Conservatives might argue that too. The gun rights people are really interesting to me. The gun control people. The gun control people are interesting because they're the same people who are upset this kid got shot. But you're the one who wants to ban the gun in the first place. So let me end by saying this. The problem I find is with mostly the left. They would defend this kid. You are the ones who called for this gun control. The gun control resulted in a cop shooting a kid because he was trying to confiscate that kid's gun. That's it. It's your fault. I'm done. I'll see y'all at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out.